Hotline Miami can be described as many things. At a basic level, it is a top-down shooter that was made all the way back in 2012. After my first playthrough, I would describe the game as mysterious, unique, and exceptionally violent. While there were moments of struggle, overall, I found the game to not be that difficult, and after completing it, I yearned for a more challenging experience. Well, luckily for me, there was a very obvious objective to pursue. Following the completion of each chapter in Hotline Miami, you receive a score and a grade based on your performance. And what better way to show mastery than to earn an A+ on every chapter? The makers of Hotline Miami must have knew people like me exist, because they specifically made this an achievement in the game and so cleverly named it Get a Life. Pursuing this achievement, I would find the challenge I was so desperately looking for. And what started off as fun and painless would in time shift to an exercise in misery. Alrighty, let's set the scene. There are 20 chapters in the base game of Hotline Miami. Luckily for us, we will not need to earn an A+ in all 20. That is because some of these stages are more for narrative purposes, and as a result, the player does not receive a grade for completing them. Removing those from the pool, this means that we need to earn an A+ on 16 levels. I earned an A+ on a few of these levels in my original playthrough, but I will not be counting those towards our total for this challenge, meaning I will need to string together 16 new A+ performances. Now that the scene has been set, let's get into the attempts. It only makes sense to do these in order, so the first level up is Prelude. At the start of any level, we are first prompted to choose our mask. Each mask grants a unique ability, and for this one, we choose Tony. Tony's ability is that his punches instantly kill enemies. Typically, unarmed attacks would only knock down mobsters, so this allows us to increase the speed that we move through the level. After clearing the upstairs floor, we grab the suitcase and make our way downstairs. We have a few slip-ups, but unsurprisingly, the opening level isn't that difficult. Which is why I was shocked to find out that we only earned an A-. We restart the level, and this time, we select Dennis, who starts with a knife. We die more times than we did with Tony, but we were able to chain our kills together seamlessly. So after barfing one more time, we get to the score screen and we earn our first A+ of the challenge. 1 down, 15 more to go. On to chapter 1. For this one, we select Aubrey, whose skill allows for more guns to spawn in on the map. This has absolutely no impact, however, as we do not pick up a single firearm throughout the entire level. Just some good old weapon throwing is all that it takes to get through the level, and without dying once, we add another A+ to the count. Overdose, aka Chapter 2. Since we are still early on in the challenge, I was trying my best to use as many unique masks as possible. For this reason, we select Oscar. It is very clear what Oscar mask does, it's just unclear to me what the benefit is supposed to be. I don't know about you, but this pulsing red light does not make playing the game where you die in one hit much easier. And from what I can tell, this has absolutely no impact on the vision of the mobsters either. But because we are still in the early levels, it's not that difficult to get to the end of the chapter. However, our efforts with Oscar only earn us an A-, so it's back to the drawing board. We switch to Zach, who has an extended combo window. Despite our visibility improving substantially, we still struggle to make it past the first room. During this point in the challenge, I was still relatively new to the game, and I severely underestimated what it would take to earn an A+. Even Zach's extended combo window couldn't compensate for the snail's pace that I was moving. And so once again, we fell short of the target goal and were forced to reload the stage. Meet Graham. His mask allows us to walk fast. Unfortunately, this will be his only appearance in the video. This is because Brandon allows us to walk faster. There is no trick here, this is a straight upgrade, so whenever we need more speed, Brandon will be our character of choice. We still took a few shotgun shells to the face, but with Brandon, we were able to put together a phenomenal run, which is capped with this 9x combo. It took us quite a bit more attempts than chapter 1, but 31 isn't all too bad in the grand scheme of things. Our next stop is Decadence, and it's one of the few levels we earned an A+ on in our first playthrough of the game. And considering this would have been only my 4th ever completed stage, I was hopeful in our chances to replicate the performance. We decided to start with Dennis, as his knife allows us to one-hit enemies, which opens up our comboing potential. It only took us a few attempts to establish the route we wanted to take to get through the stage. We started by taking out the armed mobster at the entrance, and then we would loop counterclockwise throughout the space until everyone was eventually laying on the ground dead. Though after about 20 attempts, we were the only ones laying dead on the ground, so clearly something needed to change. Rather than revising our path through the floor, we switched to Willem's mask, which allows us to steal the weapon of those we execute. This didn't make clearing the floor any easier, and we only utilized his ability to earn additional points when killing the enemy in the entrance. The section that we struggled with the most was killing the last trio of enemies in this room on the left. With 2 of them being armed, it was difficult to infiltrate the space without getting immediately gunned down. So you can imagine my disbelief when stage clear flashed across my screen instead of chapter clear. Fortunately, despite the problems we had on the first floor, we found success much quicker on the second. We did so by taking advantage of the assault rifle that we brought up from downstairs. While making our way out, we encounter our first special enemy of the run, the Thug. The Thug is larger in appearance and is immune to melee damage. This boss variant also has a bulletproof vest, so we have to execute him after knocking him down with our shotgun. Concluding the level, we save the damsel in distress and find out that we only earned the B+. Our approach never changed, and we just slowly improved our execution with each following attempt. Brandon, Willem, and Rasmus each got us close, but it was ultimately Tony who pushed us over the edge and earned us our 4th A+ of the run. Oh yeah, we're pulling out the graph for this one. After completing the first quarter of the challenge, things are going great. We almost hit triple-digit deaths in Chapter 3, but we shouldn't be too worried about that. At this rate, we won't even eclipse 1,000 attempts. Let's see how the next quarter treats us. Chapter 4 is titled Tension, and once again, it's a level we have earned an A+ for previously. Many of the mobsters on the stage carry firearms, and we struggle for a bit while we learn the layout. In Chapter 4, we are also introduced to another special enemy variant, the Dog. When the dog spots us, it will sprint and lunge at us with frightening speed. Dogs will pose a larger threat in the future as they become more numerous on stages, but the solo pup on Tension doesn't cause us too much trouble. Similar to the first floor, most of the mobsters upstairs are carrying firearms and they are quite accurate. Hey, that looks like a bomb. Surely that's not a bomb, right? My ears! Why is it so loud? With 50% of our hearing gone, we take out the last 2 enemies camping in the back room and clear the chapter. But our efforts only result in an A ranking, so it's back to square one. With the number of doors in this chapter, I thought Juan Dawn would make a good choice. This was primarily because I saw that door slams were a stat tracked in the scoring screen. Oh, by the way, since the wiki refers to this as the skyline screen, I will be using the same terminology from here on out, just for consistency purposes. At this point in the run, I didn't have a great grasp on what the best strategy was for gaining high scores, so I didn't really change how I approached levels in between attempts. Not that I really had an option, considering my execution was far from consistent. The last 2 mobsters on the level were the trickiest to kill, as their positioning made it very difficult to avoid getting shot, but when we finally managed to do so, we earned ourselves another A+. While still a victory, it did feel weird to move forward knowing that we failed to surpass our high score. I promise that we will use a different mask at some point, but it's hard to justify the use of some of them. I'm looking at you, Oscar. Whenever there is an isolated enemy at the start of a level, Willem is always a good option so we can quickly arm ourselves. Utilizing his crowbar, we make easy work of the mobsters, being sure to switch weapons whenever possible. Heading upstairs, we walk in on a guy taking a leak, and he isn't too happy about it. You would think that this would only happen once, but that is not the case at all. Once we turn our brain back on, we were able to tackle the rest of the second floor. While firearms provide range and increase our ability to quickly wipe out a room, the noise generated alerts nearby enemies, causing them to rush our position. This, in combination with the tight layout, made the gun's blazing approach difficult to pull off. So we opted to use melee weapons as much as possible before triggering the remaining hostiles. For the most part, this approach went well for us, and it isn't too long before we complete the chapter. But our performance was only good enough to earn an A-, so we reload the level. Ever heard of Brandon? So yeah, when in doubt, doing the same thing but faster was my go-to plan. Sure, being creative has its merits, but brute forcing your way through something grants a weird sense of satisfaction. Until it doesn't work. But that time isn't now, because by purely going faster, we add another A+ to the total, and it only took us 32 attempts. Chapter 6, Clean Hit. The thought of using a new character is tempting, but not tempting enough. We select Aubrey, walk into this room on the left, and are gunned down in a hail of bullets. Quickly learning our lesson, we head right this time to arm ourselves, and we have quite the selection to choose from. It's tough to make out exactly who was in the room, and dodging bullets isn't really feasible, so we are forced to resort to less savory tactics to clear the stage. Taking a ride up the elevator, we walk down this hallway and climb out this window to take an alternate path. I have no clue how Aubrey is pulling this off exactly, but that's not important. This last section is actually quite easy. With the gun graciously waiting for us, it makes dealing with the last mobsters and the thug on the toilet a breeze. Why are these guys always going to the bathroom? As the skyline screen rolls, we see that we set a new high score, but it isn't good enough. Leaning into the fact that there are a lot of guns in this chapter, we select Rami for the increased ammo capacity. Things were going well, but then I couldn't find the last enemy. Guess what? He was taking a shit. Remember how I mentioned it was hard to see? Well, guess what? There is a character who was made just for this situation. Meet George, who presumably can see further due to having a long neck. Or something. See, what I didn't know at the time was George's base visibility is unchanged, and he can only see further when panning the camera. I really didn't use this feature at this point in the run, so I convinced myself that I could see further even though in reality this was far from the truth. The ironic part is, even with the placebo in full effect, the first time we completed the chapter with George, we achieved a new high score and another A+ tally to our records. Following the theme of using new masks, Peter is our character of choice when starting Chapter 7. Peter's mask gives us quiet gunshots, making it less likely that nearby enemies will be notified when our buddies are getting disposed of. Those silent gunshots can't fix everything. After redeeming ourselves, we head up to the second floor and are reminded that our fists are useless against dogs. Due to the shotgun's slow fire rate, it is difficult to chain together kills before being mauled or gunned down. On one attempt, however, the dog AI seemingly bugged out for a moment, but we capitalized on this opportunity and picked up a nearby AR to dispose of the hound and the remaining enemies. Up until this point, chapters have only been composed of 2 floors, but we are prompted to continue marching up the stairs. Similar to the floor below, there are mobsters camped right outside the stairwell, and just like before, it takes us a bit to figure things out. With some patience and a hint of luck, another stage was down and we returned to the stairwell. Speaking of patience, I no longer had any, so despite finally reaching the top floor of the building, my desire to tactically approach the stage was non-existent. So I just charged into the room repeatedly until things worked out, which they did before not too many attempts. After receiving the stage clear message, the phone rings and we rush to pick up the call. The caller directs us to head to a nearby building to talk some sense into a guy, and without asking for an explanation, we head back downstairs to our car. Someone has clearly been through here before us, and based on the bodies strewn around, he's more than likely not interested in talking. After a quick ride on the elevator, we pass through another sea of corpses and enter the arena where our first boss fight begins. The boss mirrors our movement, swiping at us and periodically throwing his cleaver. While he's retrieving his cleaver, we have an opportunity to land a hit. After the second cycle, he lays on the ground defeated, and we take the chance to practice our golf swing. Making our way out of the building, we hop in our car and finally complete the chapter. Our relief is only temporary, however, because with a B grade, we will need to restart the chapter and try again. Not playing as a unicorn boy really highlights how effective his silent gun ability is. While we previously cruised through the first stage, the road is a bit more bumpy when using the other characters. Louis is supposedly harder to spot, but it certainly didn't feel like it. As always, playing through the level with Brandon is extremely exhilarating, but it still came up short in the score department. Wandon put up similar numbers, but felt a lot worse to play as. And where Brandon was quite literally able to run circles around the boss, as Juan, we died more times against the boss than our attempts with all the other characters combined. When we switched to Tony, things weren't going much better for us. If you don't remember, Tony's ability allows him to kill enemies with his fist, including dogs. A fact that only matters when you're able to get within melee range. This is what it looks like when you're unable to do so. These are not the same clip, and these aren't clipped out of context. These are consecutive attempts in which we get our head blasted off, over, and over, and over again. Similar to Wandon, as Tony, we also fell victim to the biker's cleaver attack multiple times in our fight. Ultimately, our attempts with Tony brought us the most misery thus far, which is why I was left speechless when I saw that we actually earned an A+. And while we did flirt with reaching double-digit attempts, we kept ourselves from succumbing. It's time for another intermission. With Chapter 7 complete, that marks the 50% point of the challenge. We have been trending upward in the number of attempts, but not at a rate that is too concerning. Tony and Wandon are tied for the number of A+ earned. Can't wait to see where we end up. Let's get back to it. Before we talk about the gameplay for Chapter 8, I just want to point out that this chapter has one of the best soundtracks in the game. With that out of the way, let's get into our experience with Step It Up. For our first attempt through the level, we select Dennis. His knife allows us to easily dispatch the first few enemies we encounter in the level. While we are immediately thrown into combat the moment we enter the club, the configuration of the first stage actually allows us to take our time, as the armed mobsters mostly ignore us as we circle around the dance floor. So our general strategy is exactly that: make a loop, tactically clearing out each room until the enemies on the dance floor are the last group remaining. Expectedly, this doesn't always go as planned. The primary reason things fall apart is because I would walk too close to the windows and get shot and killed. I said primary, but it was practically the only reason we died at all on this stage. The most frustrating part is that the vision cones felt inconsistent, so a lot of our deaths came without warning. Once the enemies on the first floor are cleared, we must proceed to the left and right stairwells to eliminate the mobsters on those respective floors as well. Taking the stairwell on the left leads us to a series of corridors that are each similar in their composition. Each compartment is patrolled by 2 mobsters, one has a gun and the other their choice of melee weapon. The stairwell on the right leads us to another disco space in the club. The hallway is so long that we are actually forced to start panning our camera. On the dance floor are 2 patrolling mobsters whose paths are structured in a way that makes it nearly impossible to enter the room without at least one of them seeing you. And because we don't have a gun, this causes some issues. Eventually we get lucky enough to knock both of them on their asses, and dealing with the remaining enemies in the room is a breeze. Now that we know what Chapter 8 has to offer, we have to figure out how to turn our B- into an A+. You know how I mentioned before that the layout of the first floor allowed us to take our time? Well, while this is nice for survivability, it doesn't help us get combos at all. In an attempt to circumvent this, we swap to Zach. But because we don't start with a weapon, it makes initiating a combo awkward. The most practical option for us at the start of the level was executing the mobster in the lobby, picking up his bat, and launching it at the mobster seated in the room on the right. This is the point where things would fall apart and would frequently result in us turning into dog food. Heading to the left wasn't an option because we couldn't deal with both the mobster and the dog with only a bat. So we stuck to the right until luck was on our side enough to let us advance to the next stages. Outside of the first floor, Zach plays identical to Dennis, so the same challenges we faced before on the upper levels are still present. The only difference being that we are rewarded more for playing well as Zach. And when everything is tallied up, we crush our previous high score and are one step closer to earning that coveted achievement. Next up, Chapter 9, aka Crackdown. Noticing the dog on the other side of the door, we opt to use Ted, who grants us immunity to dog attacks. Too bad it doesn't also provide bullet immunity. The floor plan for the opening stage is massive, and there are mobsters posted up everywhere. Even with us being able to ignore the dogs, we still have a hard time keeping track of where each of the enemies are. The one saving grace being that there are no windows, so we only need to worry about hostiles in the same room as us. Once the first stage is clear, we head upstairs to continue our murder spree. That is what I thought at least. In reality, I had just signed up for a one-way ticket to the pits of hell. The first obstacle we face are the 3 mobsters posted outside the stairwell. We quickly figure out that the most optimal way to deal with them is to wait for all of them to be on the same side and then barge in, hopefully before one of them gets a chance to retaliate. Assuming we live through our first engagement, things do not get much easier from here. Posted at the end of this hallway is a mobster who will shoot at us if we walk too close to him. So our only options are to throw a weapon at him or pick up the gun dropped by the first set of enemies and shoot him. Shooting it is! The problem with shooting is that the noise alerts the surrounding mobsters and they come rushing towards us with malicious intent. And because the weapon we have only has 2 shots, we are forced to pull something out of our ass to avoid being turned into a memory. Assuming we are able to pull that off, we sometimes still die just because we're moronic and take unnecessary risks. And we haven't even gotten to the most challenging part. Once we take out a certain number of hostiles, the police arrive. Oh yeah, new enemy type by the way. And even though I have beaten the game, it took me a while to remember that they don't take any damage, so add in some deaths for that lesson. The arrival of the cops marked the point where the chapter is clear and we are able to leave, but the aforementioned cops don't want us doing so. What makes them so effective at preventing us from escaping is the placement of these windows. You see that red laser? Well, this is what happens if it has line of sight of us. And this is what happens if the cop above have a line of sight of us. Oh, did I say the cops were the most challenging part? My bad, I misspoke. It's actually the fact that there are no checkpoints, so if we mess up at any point, it's back to the stairwell, a cycle which we endured over and over and over and over again. I did it. Freedom. No! Oh, thank God we got a checkpoint. Please be an A+, please be an A+, please be an A. Not even close. We're gonna have to come back to this one. I don't know which is scarier, the fact that our high score coming into chapter 10 is a C+, or the fact that 80,000 points only earned us a C+. With our ego still bruised from the failure to beat the previous chapter, we are desperate to get back in the win column. With the armed mobster immediately on the other side of the door, we choose Willem so we can arm ourselves without losing any momentum. This game plan works well for us. I mean, we still died a few times of course, but we were able to clear out the opening stage in less than 5 attempts. The same cannot be said about the second stage. Shoot, we died more than 5 times just trying to make it through the doorway. With the corridors being so tight and most of the mobsters having ranged weapons, a lot of our attempts ended in a hail of gunfire. Standing in one place and having a quicker draw was not going to work in this situation, and shooting while retreating was the most effective strategy for us when it came to staying alive. But it is still me at the end of the day, so moments like this still happen. Even when we didn't miss all of our shots, because of the large number of enemies on this stage, switching weapons multiple times during a combo was essential, as the limited ammo of our weapons did not allow us to just mow everyone down in one fell swoop. Eventually, we would survive the initial onslaught and finish off the remaining stragglers. Backtracking to the first floor, we head to the next stage. As we open the door, the mobster standing on the opposite side is knocked on his ass and we can have our way with him. Consent not required. I probably shouldn't go on record saying things like that. This presents us with 2 options. Option A, we take him hostage and use him as a body shield. The pros of this approach is that we have a body shield who can absorb some gunfire and keep us from dying. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get into the negatives. Firstly, this guy doesn't function as a human shield that well. Sure, there are times where a shotgun blast would have certainly killed us, but this doesn't even come close to the number of times where we thought we would survive a gunshot, just to end up laying in a pool of our own blood. The main contributor to this is the extreme decrease in movement speed that occurs when using a human shield. Because we can't turn as quickly, it leaves opening where the body shield is not facing the direction of the bullets. Combining that with the fact that the moment we start shooting, waves of enemies come charging at us from multiple directions, it may become clear why we steered away from this option. Unfortunately, option B was not ideal either. Option B involved us not taking the mobster hostage and either moving forward without killing him or trying to execute him while he laid on the ground. The problem is, when he is knocked down, he lands in front of a window, and while we can't see the mobster with the shotgun in the room, he certainly can see us. Ignoring the woes of making it past the first 10 seconds of the stage, there was still an issue of dealing with the remaining mobsters who we didn't immediately encounter. In addition to the shotgun mobster who we're all familiar with, there are enemies positioned in each of the rooms. Typically, this wouldn't be much of a problem, except that each of the rooms have plenty of windows and we would frequently be forced to approach without a ranged weapon of our own, which doesn't bode well when they each have their own guns. We eventually got through this stage with Willem, but it was essentially through dumb luck. At some point while we were spraying our weapon, we killed the mobsters in the room at the top, which made navigating the rest of the stage a lot safer. There's still more. Backtracking once again, this time we head left and enter the next room. This mobster isn't looking, so he literally doesn't see us coming. What is going on? The length of this level was starting to take its toll on me, resulting in some less than desirable death streaks. At times when playing this game, it truly does feel like you are banging your head against a brick wall. When we weren't managing to get killed by the first enemy, we found countless ways to get killed by the dog that is patrolling this space. This was mainly a result of us not having a weapon and being unable to scramble to get one in time. Outside of the dog, the architecture made it not too challenging to dispose of the mobsters, as they would politely funnel into the room. Dealing with the 3 enemies in this room to the right wasn't a problem either, as they would usually be facing the wrong way. Overall, our approach was cautious, we ducked in and out of cover frequently, and speed was not of the essence. This room was the final included in this chapter, so after clearing it, we were free to exit the stage and see how we did. Okay, a new high score is a good sign. Oh, and look at all these pop-ups. I'm feeling good about this one. Oh no. I went to bed after that, hoping that a good night's rest would rejuvenate me. While I did feel well rested when I tried again the next day, things certainly did not get any better. Returning to where the issues began, we once again started playing Chapter 9. We tried using Tony for a bit so that we weren't dependent on having a weapon to kill the dog, but this was a small benefit at best. There were no new strategy developments for the first stage other than completing it faster, but we had begun to fine-tune our strategy for the second stage. This time around, we made sure to bring a gun with us to the second floor, which helped alleviate the issue of the shotgun only having 2 shots. That, in combination with us honing in our strategy for dispatching the first 3 enemies, made our attempts more consistent, and we had a lot less early resets. The escape still caused us issues, however, in particular, the timing for getting past the sniper laser on the bottom window line. Though the improvements in play were obvious, it was not reflected in the scoring. With both Juan, Dawn, and Brandon, our scores were very similar, and we did not set new high scores with either. This was particularly concerning to see with Brandon, as up until this point, going faster was the main way we improved our scores. But in this case, it didn't seem like it would be enough. Frustrated, but still determined to make some sort of progress, we skipped returning to Chapter 10 for the time being and load up Chapter 11. The B- grade isn't much better than our C+ on Chapter 10, but I was hopeful that we would see improvement this time around. Starting with Aubrey, we make our way in and notice that there are a lot of mobsters posted up directly outside the entrance. Wanting to keep momentum and maximize our combo potential, we avoid picking up the first enemy's pistol and charge forward punching away. This did not work. No matter what we tried, there were just too many enemies. Sometimes we got very close just to fall victim to the last enemy standing. Other times, we would knock all of them down, but die while trying to finish the job. The worst scenarios would be when we actually did manage to eliminate the first group, and we would get shot across the room because we were spotted through a window. After over 25 attempts, we made it past this opening sequence maybe once or twice. Switching to Dennis essentially made the melee enemies non-factors, as we could consistently take them out with our knife, but we were still just as defenseless against the mobsters who had guns. This jerk on the yellow couch would watch as I murdered all of his companions and would just stand up and shoot me in the face as I helplessly walked towards him. To get past him, we needed to backtrack in the middle of our combo to arm ourselves with a firearm, and hopefully he didn't shoot us while we did. A lot of time passed and a lot of wolf blood was spilled, but eventually we persevered and were able to make our way up the elevator. Those deaths can be ignored, he isn't really a concern. However, our situation gets much worse after we make our way down the hallway. Once we enter this larger room, the number of hazards we are exposed to grows greatly. The largest of which are the 2 mobsters behind the window panes at the bottom of the screen. Normally, enemies are susceptible to melee attacks, but in this case, they are not. This puts us in quite the bind since we came upstairs equipped with a lowly baseball bat. That would be enough of an issue to begin with, but on top of that, there are patrolling guards who we are forced to take out once we come to the door. And half the time, they land just far enough left that when we go to execute them, we are exposed to the mobsters behind the glass. When we manage to not aggro those guys, there is still the risk that one of the many other patrolling mobsters catches wind of us and stops by to give us a not so warm welcome. Even when we pick up the first guy pistol, we still fail to get past the threshold. Realizing this wasn't working, I restarted the level and inexplicably picked Oscar. I don't think you need me to tell you that this didn't achieve anything. Now using Tony, we used brute force to make our way past the opening stage and return back upstairs. We made the same mistake of entering the floor without a ranged weapon, so our situation hasn't really changed. However, during one attempt, we were lucky enough to aggro one of the patrolling mobsters with a gun, and he ran to a location where we could kill him and pick up his shotgun. Now armed with a shotgun, it was much easier to kill the remaining enemies, including the ones behind the glass. On the last stage of this chapter, things go much smoother. None of the rooms have more than a couple of hostiles, and the way they are positioned makes it simple to ambush them without getting shot at. We got shot at through our windows a few times, sure, but that is inevitable on any stage that has them. Unlike the floor before, all the enemies could be reached using melee attacks, so it was only a minor inconvenience. Anyways, that's another chapter complete. Let's head back to the car and see how we did. I thought I was done! In true Hotline Miami fashion, Chapter 11 has one final trick up its sleeve. As we are exiting, a van full of mobsters crashes through the entrance, and we have to act quickly to stay alive. A surprise mini-boss, if you will. The checkpoint is right before the car drives through, so we had a lot of deaths from getting ran over. I would be thinking about what I could possibly do different to not die, and in that split second of thinking, the checkpoint would reload and we would be dead again. When we managed to dodge the van, there were 2 waves of enemies that made their way out of the car in an attempt to kill us. Each wave is composed of a thug and a mobster, and because the thug can't be killed by melee, our first priority is getting a firearm in our hands as quickly as possible. Speed is key here, as the moment the first wave is down, the second wave is exiting the car, and we are likely in the need of a second gun by this point. All the while, the boss in the van is throwing Molotovs at us. And whether we are hit directly or stand too close to the fire, we are killed instantly and forced to start the entire thing all over again. It was hectic, and the attempts came in rapid fashion. After we took out his associates, the coward throwing the Molotov comes out asking for mercy, which we did not grant him. With the chapter actually being done this time, we head to the car and wait to see how we did. Seeing a new high score is a good sign, and so is the laundry list of actions that are being displayed on the screen. But when the final numbers are tallied up, we only earn a grade of A-. A great start for sure, but disappointing considering it took us over 70 attempts just to get our first completion. Our situation was beginning to look dire. Since completing chapter 8, we had attempted 3 straight levels and did not achieve an A+ on any of them. While we could have continued to skip through levels until we broke the slump, I decided to stop running away from our problems and vowed to beat these chapters before continuing. But in order to do that, we were going to have to do something differently. Up until this point, I haven't really explained my strategy for earning high scores, and that's because I didn't have one. Because things were going relatively well, it wasn't important for me to have a deep understanding of what really went into earning a high score, other than the basics of going faster and getting longer combos. And while those two things are very important, there are more factors that contribute towards earning higher scores. Let's take a quick look at the Skyline screen. Based on our performance during a run, we earned points in each of the following 6 categories: killing, boldness, combos, time bonus, flexibility, and mobility. Most of these are self-explanatory, but I'll run through them quickly. Killing is related to how many enemies you kill and how you kill them, and depending on the type, more or less points are earned. For instance, gun kills are worth less than an execution. Boldness. Boldness is arguably one of the most important categories, but it took me the longest to understand. Basically, if you perform an action while you are spotted, it will increase your boldness score. Though we walk up and punch the mobster in both scenarios, we earn a lot more points in the second clip because we were spotted before knocking him out. I have been mentioning combos endlessly. The longer the combo, the more points. No need to harp on that one. Time bonus is just as straightforward. The quicker we complete a level, the more we earn. While the magnitude of points is typically on the lower end, as demonstrated, speed can be a good tool to earn a few extra points. Flexibility is similar to killing, but is more binary in nature. Each time we get a kill using a unique weapon or method, we earn 500 points. Lastly, there is mobility. Nothing fancy going on here. The more we move, the more points we earn. This one can feel a bit counterintuitive at times as it doesn't necessarily contribute to efficiency. During the entirety of this session, I was not aware of the intricacies of the scoring system, and it likely contributed to our lack of progression. As I tried and retried each of the 3 levels I was stuck on, I slowly learned how to manipulate each of the categories. It wasn't easy. We died a lot. I mean a lot. No, seriously. So I took another break. After another night's rest, we once again tried our chances with Chapter 9, but this time around, we have knowledge on our side. For starters, we now understood the concept of boldness, so whenever possible, we did our best to be spotted before killing a mobster. Additionally, prioritizing getting melee and execution kills over gun kills, as they gave us more points. The reason we are using Carl here is because he starts with a melee weapon, and the execution with his drill gives extra points, though the extended animation gets us in trouble occasionally. The other aspects of our pass through the first stage remain unchanged from our first set of attempts. Returning upstairs, we apply the same point earning principles. Mainly we do this by trying to execute as many enemies as possible with the drill. Unfortunately, those extra points were often short-lived as we frequently died in the middle of the animation. The last improvement came in the endgame. Since the police are triggered after a certain number of mobsters are dead, if we can manage to trigger the police raid while near the stairwell, we could avoid having to deal with the sniper and the police altogether, therefore limiting the number of times we risk restarting and increasing our time bonus. Carl doesn't end up being the answer to our problem, as the drill hinders our combo capabilities too much. Switching to Ted made our life easier, as we no longer had to focus on avoiding the dogs. Our execution was great, and we set a new high score, but only marginally. We were running out of room to improve, as I felt like we had fully optimized the chapter. Going faster hadn't worked, as we had played Brandon multiple times, so we opted to select Zach, in the hopes that we can squeeze some extra combo points. The run was very similar to the previous one with Ted, but the result was different. And after 350 attempts, we had finally earned an A+ on Chapter 9. As predicted, with our combo and boldness scores being the differentiating factors. Continuing our revenge tour, we load up hot and heavy to improve our dreadful C+ grade. Zach's performance in the previous chapter kept him in the lineup. A little extra emphasis was put on maintaining our combos, with us actually demonstrating patience on multiple occasions. The second stage was a breeze, so now it was time to return to this dreaded room. The opening sequence of the room was still an issue for us. Executing the mobster in the beginning is no safer than it was before, and going around limits our chances to combo, so we had to try something else. Rather than focusing on the first enemy, we began to prioritize taking out the mobster off screen with the gun that kept killing us. Not only did this prevent him from killing us, but the noise from the gunfire caught the attention of all the nearby enemies and they came running towards us. This came with its own set of challenges as there was quite a few hostiles backed into the stage. However, because they all came running at us and they did so in a relatively straight line, this gave us a golden opportunity to rack up our combo streak and balloon our score. The assault rifle we entered the room with was the perfect weapon for pulling this off, as its large magazine and rapid fire rate turned us into a killing machine. And with an entire stage left to go, we had almost matched our high score. I felt that I had entered the zone, manipulating engagements to earn the most boldness in every scenario, ensuring that each combo was at least 3 kills. It wasn't the flashiest gameplay at every moment, but we would just have to live with that. As we completed the level, it finally reached the moment of truth. I would likely not be able to replicate this performance, so if we were going to earn an A+, it needed to be now. As the scores tallied up, our heart pounded. The anticipation was suffocating. And as the final actions flashed across the screen, we learned how we did. We did it. From a C+ to an A+ in one successful run, I was absolutely elated. And now it was time to finish off the last of the big 3, Deadline. Any guesses on who we select? Zach has gotten us past the last 2 chapters we were stuck on, so the choice wasn't a difficult one. To get past the opening area, the key is to use the silenced pistol that is dropped and kill the enemies as they charge at us. The main challenge being that we only have 13 shots, so we have to be sure to make each of them count. We still have some figuring out to do on the second floor. I would love to say that we came to some awesome realization that totally changed how we approach the stage, but that simply wouldn't be true. Other than the general concepts we have discussed previously in regards to boldness, we just have to replay the stage repeatedly until we beat it. We died to the people below, we died to the people above, the people across, and the people directly next to us. For us to beat the level, we have to camp, hoping that the mobsters would run towards us so we could limit our overall exposure. This approach certainly hindered our ability to chain higher combos, but it was the best we could do. Upstairs, the game plan was much simpler. We would throw our weapons at the enemies with guns in the windows and perform execution kills whenever possible. This isn't where the chapter ends if you all remember, as we still have the funky van sequence to complete before we are free to go. I did forget about the van sequence however, and it made things a bit more tricky. We need a gun in order to kill the thugs, but since we didn't bring one with us, we only have 2 ways to get one. Kill one of the mobsters and take their gun, or hope that one spawns. Because of how quick everything happens, both of these options are challenging to execute. Even if we do get a weapon and manage to kill the first thug, we need to survive long enough to kill the second wave of enemies. After that quest is completed, we once again get to take revenge on the Molotov throwing coward and exit the level. We did well, setting a new high score, but it wasn't enough to earn an A+. Let's do it again! Break this guy's neck, shoot all of these guys, clear out this room, that's everyone dead. Speedrun through this section and make easy work of all the mobsters. This isn't a joke, we legitimately didn't die during this section. Bringing a weapon into this portion makes things much easier. Not a walk in the park, but certainly easier. Oh yeah, that's more like it. 89,000 points is more than enough to earn us an A+, and the last of the big 3 have finally fallen. That also marks the 75% mark, so let's go look at the graph. It would be an understatement to say that there was a difficulty spike during this section of the challenge, but we persevered through it. It also made us undoubtedly much better at the game, which should help with the final quarter of the run. Assault. Now that's something I can get behind. Assault has us raiding a police station. To start things off, we select Tony, as he has shown to be a solid choice for most levels. The layout of the first floor positions the officers in a way that makes it easier to ambush them despite their large numbers. The one aspect of the level design that did give us trouble was, once again, the windows. However, as long as we avoided the windows, the funneling officers were easy to take care of. For the second stage, we were carried by our guns despite us playing a character with a melee ability. Almost every officer fell victim to our gunfire. I felt like the Terminator as I marched through each room and laid waste to those who crossed my path. It was more of the same on the third and final stage of the chapter. This room is a chief of some sort, camped out in the middle of the room, surrounded by his subordinates. They will shoot at us the moment we fall into their line of sight, so it is critical for us to peek in and out of cover while blind firing, hoping that we could take out a few more with each barrage. There are a few enemies strewn about in the perimeter rooms, but they do not put up much resistance. Once all the policemen are dead, we unlock the prisoner's cell and get revenge. He deserved it, trust me. Chapter 13 is straightforward relative to the gauntlet of levels we just endured, so only earning a B grade was not too demoralizing. For our next set of attempts, we select the speedster Brandon. I wanted to leverage Brandon's speed not only to increase our mobility score, but to open up more combo opportunities. The way I went about this initially was by charging in and punching all of the officers. But unlike Tony, Brandon's punches are not lethal, so this didn't wield the results I was looking for. When this wasn't working out, we tried modifying our approach a bit. Instead of focusing on getting execution kills, we would rush in and get a gun as quickly as possible. The only problem is that all the guns were in the hands of the police officers, so we would need to steal one. And we would typically die shortly after or in the process of doing so. Initially, we were working from the outside in, starting in the edges of the levels, working our way towards the center. Eventually, we would pivot this approach and start in the middle area, killing a few enemies with melee attacks, before attacking the enemies located in the perimeter rooms. This resulted in some hectic firefights, but we would survive one and move on to the second stage. There is a lot of room for improvement on the second stage. While our Rambo impression was exhilarating, the lack of weapon variants and the fact that we almost exclusively got gun kills definitely hurt our score last time around. So this time, we are whacking enemies with our weapons more and are shooting less. Even with the changed game plan, we breeze through the level easily and advance to the third stage once again. The first change we make in our approach is starting with taking out the 2 guards in the room at the top and then quickly rushing to the room at the bottom to chain the kills with the guards that are located there. The second adjustment we made was related to how we approach eliminating the remaining enemies on the stage. Rather than splitting our focus between the enemies in the perimeter and the tower defense group in the center, we focused on clearing the room on the left because we could guarantee more kills within our combo. This also made life simpler, because rather than having the potential of enemies charging us from 2 different angles, they could only come from the room above, which was much easier to keep our eyes out for. Other than those adjustments, the remainder of the level was the same. As I mentioned previously, this chapter is quite simple, so there are only so many ways we can approach it. As we hop into our car and drive away, we see that Brandon achieved what he was supposed to do. Our combo and mobility scores went through the roof, and our new high score crushed the previous one. So much so that we jump outright from a B to an A+. Okay, chapter 14. Let's get into this. Willem always does us well, so let's start with him. Oh, only 2 enemies in the first stage? This finna be a breeze! Please don't do this to me. Third time's the charm, surely? After clearing out the first 2 enemies in the lobby, we make our way through the showroom. Correction, we make our way to the showroom because we can't actually take more than a few steps before we are killed. With Louie and Willem, we tried entering the room with a gun and shooting our way through, but with Ted, we try a more melee-focused approach. Using Ted makes it so there is one less enemy that we have to worry about, but that doesn't move the needle too much in the grand scheme of things. The room is very open, and the mobsters with guns have very good eyesight. No matter what, we would need a gun of our own to clear out the ballroom, meaning we would need to pick one up from one of the mobsters. Even when we are able to live long enough to arm ourselves with a gun, there are countless times where we run out of ammo before taking care of all the enemies. And an empty magazine does not bode well when there is a thug roaming around. In conclusion, this section took a lot of trial and error, and on 90% of the attempts, we never even stepped foot on the carpet. Legitimately, our successful attempt looked no different than the 30 that came before it, but beggars can't be choosers. Upstairs, the benefits of Ted Mask are doubled, as there are 2 dogs roaming on the floors. Compared to the floor below, there are a lot less enemies with guns on the second floor. So we ditch the shotgun and go for as many execution kills that we can get. Our reflexes let us down a few times, but otherwise, this floor doesn't present us too much trouble. The last person alive on the floor is the club manager. He rats out his boss's address in the hopes to convince us to spare his life, but with him taken care of, we make the all too familiar trot back to the car and await our grade. Despite us setting a new high score, our effort only earns us a B+ grade, so the job isn't over yet. Look who's back! By having the 2 enemies in the lobby chase us, we can optimize our points by being exposed and executing both of them. Because of where he is standing and the openness of the showroom, going for an execution on the first enemy where he stands is a bad idea. So we change our approach by luring him towards us so we can safely get the kill. At least most of the time. When it came to taking care of the remaining enemies in the room, the main key was to just play more patiently. Rather than going balls to the wall and charging into the room hoping that every bullet misses us, we take a more tactical approach and position ourselves to improve our chances of survival. We camped, alright? I mean, barely anyone died on the showroom floor. Upstairs, we started replicating the melee focus strategy that we used with Ted, but we weren't getting the results that we wanted. The reaction time issue still persisted when it came to taking out the mobsters in the bathroom. But also, the dogs became a problem since we were no longer immune to them. We still executed the 2 bathroom boys, but the rest of the opening wave got the gun treatment. The enemies in the 2 side rooms were frequently not alerted by this going down, so we could revert back to our melee tactics for those rooms. Once again, after everyone is dead, we head to the club owner's office and give him what he has coming. As the score is calculating, we see that our high score took a major leap, largely thanks to our performance in the boldness and combo categories. And with only 77 attempts this time around, we earned an A+ on Vengeance. Oh, look at that! A chapter we have earned an A+ on before. Let's hope we can replicate that. For these last couple chapters, we no longer have the luxury of picking between different masks. We will play as the biker guy and the biker guy only. He may look familiar, and he should, as he is the boss enemy previously killed in Chapter 7. Not getting too deep into the lore because that's not why you are here, but basically we are replaying the events that led up to the confrontation, but from the biker's perspective. Or something, I'm not really too sure. The biker's kit is very simple. He has a cleaver which can be used for slashing people, and his only range is in the form of 3 knives that he starts each level with. We are unable to pick up new weapons of any kind. These knives can be picked up, but in the chaos of most levels, this doesn't happen. On this chapter, the enemy with the shotgun behind the desk was causing us the most trouble. Because of his placement at the edge of the screen, and the fact that we couldn't rely on free aiming the throwing knife, he repeatedly killed us well before we had a reasonable chance to take him out. The mobster with the AR in the first room also killed us a few times, but all we had to do to deal with him was to bait him to walk towards us as we hid behind a column. Ultimately, the solution to our problem was locking on, but we had to pan our camera in order to do so from a safe distance. Overall, there was only around 10 enemies and the chapter was only 1 stage long. Heading back to the motorcycle, I thought we were free to go, but there is actually a guy in the back room freaking out. The dude gives us the information we were looking for, and for a change, we don't brutally murder someone? Actually, heading back to our motorcycle this time, we hop on and ride off to our next destination. Something you'll notice is that our flexibility score will always be 0 with the biker guy, since we are locked into using one loadout. We don't earn a new high score, but for the first time in a long time, that doesn't matter, as our performance was still good enough to earn us an A+. Chapter 17. This is it. This is where our hundreds of deaths have brought us to. Because of our limited supply of knives, our goal is to only resort to using them when necessary. So for the most part, we try our best to get as many kills with our cleaver. While we are making our way through the level, we are jump scared by another mobster with a shotgun, but we managed to hit a wild off-screen throwing knife kill. While certainly a cool moment, we burned through all our knives in the first room, meaning we will only have access to melee attacks for the remainder of the chapter. Heading up the stairs, we enter what appears to be an arcade of some sort. The limitations of our current loadout become apparent rather quickly. Not being able to attack from range essentially means we are incapable of getting picks on groups of enemies, so our only option is to rush in and hope we can kill the entire group with our cleaver before they can react. Despite the deaths piling up, the results were more promising than when we started by going to the room on the right, so we persisted. On the attempts when we would manage to take out the 3 mobsters in the pink room, which was not a lot by the way, we had to make our way down this long corridor. And while no one in the orange room had a gun, the dudes behind the glass in the back room certainly did. And since we could not harm them due to our lack of knives, we had to switch up our approach. With the path on the left and the path on the right no longer being options, our only remaining choice was to head straight down the middle. To make this work for us, we had to be patient. The pathing of the 2 patrolling mobsters prevented us from quickly disposing of both of them, so we had to do it one at a time. We also had to be sure not to get too close to the windows so we wouldn't get shot from below. When we finally reached the 2 guys camping, it was no trouble to take them out. And all we had to do to clear the yellow room was to lure one of them out. And once again, everyone on the second floor was dead. Except for us, of course. That marked the end of the chapter, and if we earned an A+, it would be the end of the challenge. But we didn't earn an A+, we didn't even set a new high score. But it would have been foolish for us to think we would have gotten it on the first try. Reloading the chapter, we began strategizing changes we can implement to improve our previous run. Our first idea was to change absolutely nothing about our strategy and just execute better. This didn't work for one particular reason. The reason being that there was not much room for us to improve on from an execution standpoint. Without the option to choose between the different masks, there is no way to improve or alter the mechanical capabilities of our in-game character. We couldn't suddenly decide to move faster, increase our combo timer, or just make the screen red. Seriously, someone explain to me why Oscar is in the game. We did manage to play marginally better, but marginal improvement wasn't going to set a new high score, so back to the drawing board we went. The first thing we could do to improve our chances is by heading into the second stage while still having throwing knives to use. Using the throwing knives to get through the first floor was still very helpful, but we spent an extra few seconds picking some up to use upstairs. With the knives equipped, we have some more flexibility with how we proceed through the floor. The knives let us take the path on the left, as we can throw them down a hallway to hit the two mobsters in the back room. That, in combination with our increasing understanding of the enemy pathing, resulted in us dying significantly less. Dying less does not automatically translate to earning more points, and in our case, we were actually regressing in performance. That left us with one option: locking the fuck in. And with a score of over 62,000, we set a new high score and earned the last A+ grade we needed to complete the challenge. But something's wrong. I didn't get the achievement. That should be 16 A+ grades. If we didn't get the achievement, what was the point of doing all this? All the hours, all the deaths. How am I going to justify this if there's nothing to show for it? We load up chapter 18 thinking that maybe there was something we missed. And after shaking this guy's hand with the cleaver, we hear a notification that is music to our ears. Unfortunately, the overlay wasn't captured for OBS, but here's what the achievement looks like. Now let's look at that final graph. In the end, it took us a total of 1,263 attempts to earn an A+ in every chapter in Hotline Miami. This means, on average, it took us 79 attempts per chapter, but obviously this is heavily skewed by chapter 9. As I mentioned previously, I would consider chapters 9 through 11 to be the toughest segment of this room, which is backed up by the fact that these are the only 3 chapters which we eclipsed triple-digit attempts on. Here are some more stats for you nerds out there. Despite there being 27 masks to choose from, we only successfully earned A+ while using 7 of them. In chapters 16 and 17, we are forced to play the biker, so we really only had 14 chances to use unique masks, so we did so half the time. We leaned really heavily on Zach, especially in the later chapters, but Brandon and Tony also had multiple A+ caliber runs. Our playstyle varied even less, with us only earning 6 unique descriptions. Unsurprisingly, most of them are related to earning combos, but we did earn Invisible Man and Executioner a couple of times. If you enjoy Hotline Miami, I would definitely recommend going for this achievement. Doing so gave me a much deeper understanding of the game and its mechanics, while also giving additional replay value to a game that is shorter than most. Get a Life obviously isn't that rare of an achievement, and this is a game from 2012, but overall, I had a ton of fun earning it. With that being said, that brings us to the end of this very long video, and I want to take a moment to thank all of you for sticking around to the end. I know I haven't uploaded in a really long time, but I wanted to stick out editing one of these challenge videos for a change. I attempt a bunch of challenges in the games I play, but I rarely take the time to turn them into videos. I don't know what I'll be uploading next, but I'll try my best to keep you all in the loop. I'm at a Discord, by the way, so def go join if you want to hang out or if you just want more frequent updates on what's upcoming on the channel. Appreciate all the support, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.